Welcome to another edition of our podcast, Cases and Concepts. This morning, I'm pleased and proud to introduce to you Tom Vandenberg. Tom is a friend of the firm, and he's a respected anti-gun violence advocate and a leader in Illinois. He has been involved with um, the victims from Highland Park. He's worked with lawmakers um, and a number of other gun shooting incidents around the country. Tom is the founder of GPAC, which is a political action committee that is specifically involved in um, anti-gun violence legislation and attempting to make our country safe again, um, so that our children do not have the same risk and exposure to gun violence that they currently have. Tom, welcome. Um, I'd like you, if we can, just to start off by how you got involved into this advocacy work.
Thank you very much, Stefan, and thank you for having me. I'm been interested in this issue for 40 years, since 1992, when I lost my son to gun violence back in April 25, 1992.
I'm so sorry.
And it's kind of, right now we're talking 4th of July. I happen to live in Highland Park, so I can relate to what's going on, certainly with the people who have lost loved ones because of that mass shooting that happened then. It's transformational, obviously. You are, knocking your head, what did I do wrong? I dropped him off at a party. I scouted the party. It looked appropriate. It was in the north side of Chicago. I lived in Evanston at the time. And it looked like a very safe place to drop your son off at the party. And when I picked him up, there was streaming cars, fire cop cars, fire trucks all over the place, total chaos. And soon realized that my son was caught in a crossfire. He's 15 years old at the time. And when you try to figure out what happened, okay, how did this happen? Um, I came to the conclusion after doing a lot of research that what in the world were six youths so capable of getting a lethal weapon that caused such horrible thing to happen? How is it so easy to get? And that was my beginning of my journey in terms of gun violence prevention. And it became so obvious that the manufacturers of these weapons were never held accountable. We have more regulations over teddy bears than we do over guns, et cetera. So I just guess not to go on too long about my story, but I'll certainly talk about how the transition from several nonprofit organizations around educating the public to a political action committee in order to get things done, how that occurred. But I'm just really, happy to be on board with an organization that is looking at this in a broader perspective from the manufacturers being held accountable. So very pleased that your firm is taking this on.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that. I want to give you a little bit of pushback, and I want to play devil's advocate here with you for a minute. You've been involved in this fight for 40 years. Within those 40 years, we've seen Sandy Hook, Uvalde, Highland Park. If those events alone have not been enough to motivate the public, what's it going to take?
I've been very active in national organizations. We always felt that there's similarities to the tobacco industry, that it really is going to take a legal process around which companies have to pay and pay dearly. Okay, that's number one. That has to happen in conjunction with this. Otherwise, it's going to be bit by bit. The other thing that all those years that I was active, I was mostly active from a standpoint of a educate the public. The public is horrified. 80%, 40, 60% are in favor of assault weapon bans, you name it. The public has always been there. But what I came to realize, we never had a political strategy. And what I'm going to summarize the political strategy that took place in Illinois once I was done with these national groups was money and votes. If you want things done and you want your representatives and your senators to respond to you, you need to get active in the political system that exists, the reality of it. They need votes. And so you have to organize people in districts to make sure that they pay attention to what those issues are. And the power structure of the political system exists right now around funding campaigns. Thus, we created a PAC, a super PAC, a regular PAC. We also created a C4 called our action committee. So we use all those political items to focus on what we think are sensible, passable, realistic, safe gun laws. So our approach is, so I think two things. I think we need the legal process to make them accountable, and I think we need a political process that is more than educating the hearts and minds of people. Because the NRA for a long time has used those political tactics of bullying and bullying our state representatives and our senators, and we need to come to their support.
Tom, what do you say to those neighbors of yours, of mine, and around the country that support the Second Amendment, that say it's everyone's constitutional right to have a high-powered weapon, that it's the right of every citizen to be able to protect themselves and to carry a gun, and the fact that gun violence is so high, that there is so much of it, is all the more reason that we need to have more people carrying guns for self-protection?
Our strategy when I started out, because I've got some pretty sophisticated lawyers in our pen that help us fashion these bills and work on them. Number one, we want to make sure they pass the Constitution. And number two, they're sensible and they protect individuals. So everything that we've passed, like basically seven areas that I can detail, have to do with sensible ownership, responsible ownership. I'm not against anyone having guns in their possession because they fear for their lives. Whatever reality is, it isn't doesn't make them safer. But I won't get into that. The reality is that people feel they need that for protection, and our job is not to take those guns away. Okay, but they have to determine they're reasonable, they're sensible people. They can't have serious crimes in their past. Those people and people with severe mental health problems should not have access to those guns. We know that that's what happened in Highland Park. Somebody was not supposed to have that gun because they had serious mental health issues, was not old enough, and a parent actually helped him get that assault weapon. So we've passed the assault weapon ban in Highland Park. Illinois has been safe, and I'm not saying it isn't going to happen, but we've been safe from other assault weapons. We think that a sensible approach to those weapons is going to make the difference. It's about accountability. For me, you think of it as registration licensing, right? You have an automobile. What do you have to do? You have to prove that you're capable of driving. My sister, who turned 85, rear-ended somebody. They took her license away because she couldn't pass the test anymore. She shouldn't have access to the car anymore. Okay. So that and then there's the registration, the system of registration, which is what we did with the assault weapon ban. We didn't take it away from those who have already purchased it. We let them basically certify that they have it. So very careful the way we do this. We're not trying to take people's guns away. That's that myth that the NRA tries to perpetrate.
Tom, what do you say to your neighbors and fellow citizens that say the gun problem is primarily an urban issue? It's primarily in the Black community. It's primarily in the Hispanic community. It's not in the rural community. It's not in the white suburban community. The people who make this a racial issue. What do you say to them?
Again, Highland Park is pretty good example that I think people thought even though Highland Park had an assault weapon ban in the community, that was going to prevent it from happening. It didn't happen. Mass shootings occur outside of the urban areas for the most part. So, though that kind of mass shooting can happen anywhere and has proven to happen anywhere. Sandy Hook is a really strong example of that. The urban areas are not necessarily part of the assault weapon problem as much as they are about certain other things like large capacity magazines, switches that put on pistols, making the machine guns. So it's a bit of a different approach, but it's the same theory, right? Availability of guns. So we work on straw purchasers. We just passed a law on lost and stolen, which is one of the areas that the black market has been used for. You purchase 10 handguns, you drive into the city, open your trunk, and sell six Glocks, and one of them turns up in crime or homicide. It's going to be traced back to you. And you can say what you did in the past. You say, well, I don't know, it was lost, it was stolen, but now we're making you accountable for the trafficking of those weapons. So it really goes to the very strategic plan of making it more difficult for people who shouldn't have weapons to have weapons. That's the process wherever it happens, whether it's in suburban white America or whether it's in urban Chicago. In the meantime, just be aware of one thing. I mean, since we've started this process, the homicide rate in the city of Chicago is one of the lowest all time right now. A couple of days ago, I looked and it was 188. Last year at the same time, it was like 272. So that's quite a dip right now, and it's these laws that are making it more difficult, keeping more accountability for distributing weapons, as well as the community violence intervention process that has helped also.
So when I go into rural areas, when I go into rural Wisconsin, for example, I hear my neighbors point out that this is just a problem in Chicago. This is just a problem in Milwaukee or other large urban areas. But the statistics show that gun violence in small towns has increased by 60 and 70%. And as you're pointing out, it's decreasing in urban areas because of their statutes. 13 of the top 20 counties in the United States have the highest gun homicides per capita in the country. But that doesn't get reported. Why do you think that is?
Um, it's a political narrative that we've been dependent upon for a long time. I think this is the narrative that the NRA perpetrated at the turn of the century and really capitalized on it when Obama got elected. They made it an issue of race and it became sort of embedded. I think you're going to see it change now that you're talking about statistics that you see. I think the alerting to suicides among young white males, for instance, is growing exponentially because there's a lack of proper storage. So I think we have to get that message out more than we have been. I think that's a critical piece to do that. But it's ingrained, it gets passed on. You need to start changing the narrative.
So one of the issues that's in front of our country right now has to do with the federal assault weapon ban that was in existence for a decade, from 1994 to 2004, which survived multiple constitutional challenges, and it was successful in preventing certain types of semi-automatic weapons with large capacity magazines. After that was repealed, mass shootings increased 347% in the country. Yet on day one of President Trump's inauguration, he shut down the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Why do you think that was?
Because the constituency that he was appealing to are very pro-gun. They come from that line of 3%, I'll call them, because I've battled the three percenters for a long time. They're very aggressive around the possession of weapons. They believe themselves kind of militia minded. And Trump has targeted that group to lead the charge, if you will. It's no mistake that January 6th was led by these militia groups who tout their weapons and use their weapons as intimidation. And when I first got started, and this is going back, as I said, 30 plus years, I used to go down to Springfield and talk about gun legislation that was thrown out all the time. We never passed anything, but we were always trying. Mayor Daley would throw out a bunch of bills, but none of them passed because he didn't have a strategic plan around it or a strategy. Anyway, my point was I'd have representatives tell me, "Oh, I felt bad about it. I understand your story. I feel sympathy for you, and frankly, I agree with you, but the NRA threatens me. They threaten my family. We've had our local senator here carried one of our initial bills a couple of years ago, could not carry it again the next year because her family was threatened so much. So we developed a political muscle to fight back on that, and that's why they are now more afraid of us than they are of the NRA because of our political strategy. But that bullying tactic has been going on for a long time.
Tom, for the mothers, the fathers, the grandparents, the brothers, and the sisters that want to support common sense gun violence, can you tell them how they can support your efforts?
We certainly have a database of people that we depend upon to contact their senators, representatives. That's important. There's committee hearings on a particular, legislation. Um, they need to weigh in. We need to have people weigh in on this. The other thing is, I can't overemphasize the importance of having adequate funds to run a campaign. And that's really what it comes down to. I've been blessed by telling people the story that we have. I have people who have become Founders Circle members who have contributed on a yearly basis from 10 to $100,000 a year. And they say, you know what? I like your strategy. I'm behind you. Go for it. And that has really made the difference. Doesn't mean your $10 isn't going to be valuable, but certainly the support financially is essential as we work this campaign through to not only change the hearts and minds of people, but to change the laws to make them sensible so bad folks can't have guns. And it shouldn't be so easy accessible for young people to get guns. That I think is really important to emphasize.
And for folks who want to contribute to your organization, how do they go about that?
You can look up our website, gpacillinois.com, and get a good sense of what we do, what we've accomplished, the number of bills that we have passed, holding gun industry members accountable, banning military assault weapons, eradicating ghost guns, preventing illegal gun ownership, holding corrupt gun dealers accountable, requiring firearms removable to protect domestic violence survivors, and strengthening safe storage and lost firearms is still on the governor's desk waiting to be signed.
Tom, I want to give you the final word. What is your final word to our listeners as to why this is such a pressing issue?
It's a pressing issue because of the lethality of these instruments. I grew up as a kid in Wisconsin with a little hunting rifle, and we were taught how to use them and how to clean them and how to store them properly. It's so we grew up that way. We have to get back to that responsible ownership. It's something that's very lethal. It can change the lives of people just like that. We began the program talking about Highland Park and myself in terms of the trauma that gun violence puts in a family is incredible. It just you never get over that. And I think it's from the human emotion part and from the stability of communities. You talk about, gun violence within the Black and brown communities, the trauma that has been caused in those communities because of gun violence. They talk about, the other issues, housing and food and all those other things, but the trauma from gun violence just cannot be compared to some of the other areas. You got to give people a chance, and they're not going to do well if they're suffering from that trauma.
On this upcoming anniversary of Highland Park, I wish you a much, much better 4th of July. Thank you.
And I want to thank you for your firm's activity in this issue. I'm really looking forward to what's going to happen around the whole issue of accountability, responsible accountability for manufacturers and dealers. So I thank you.
Thank you very much.